Welcome to the Harmony Hall of Friends podcast. So, Ben Hoffnung, welcome to the Harmony Hall of Friends podcast.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, Paul, and lovely to see you two after several years. Amazingly, we were trying to work out how many years it was, but it's certainly at least 5 years, I would have thought. Something like
5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years, yeah.
Well, now, Ben, look, as you've alluded to, I've known you for many years. And to be honest, a joy for me is to see how your career's blossomed from those early student days at the Royal Academy of Music to what, in effect, is one of our finest period performance musicians. Now, obviously, your speciality is timpani, but you're also a percussionist. You're a choral director, you're a conductor, you're a professor at the Royal Academy of Music, you play in several chamber orchestras, and most importantly, you go fishing. So let's park the fishing.
Yeah,
We'll deal with that a bit later. But as far as the music is concerned, it's an extraordinary CV. So can you just take us back right to the beginning? Can you tell us about your early influences and really what stimulated your passion for music, and I suppose how it shaped your career?
When I was very young, probably no more than 3.5 years old, and my father happened to be collecting something from Boozy and Hawkes, a big music shop in Regent's. Outside the store was a skip, and in this skip were a pile of old instruments and old God knows what rubbish, but on the top was this bass drum. I mean, it was obviously not a huge bass drum, but it was a bass drum nevertheless. And my father popped in back into the shop, said, "Look, will I take this for my son?" And they said, "Yeah, help yourself." So somehow or other, he got into the back of his car. So it can't have been that big. Or maybe he arranged for it to be delivered later. I don't know. I used to enjoy this drum, and I have very distant, I mean, obviously I was a very tiny boy then, but I have memories of the being excited by this, this volume of skin and the vibration and the sound that it made.
Many people will not really know the difference with all the timpani. So, for instance, we've got modern timpani, we've got classical timpani, we've got Baroque timpani. Can you just give us a brief overview of all those different kind of makes of timpani?
I mean, timpani, they're magical instruments. I mean, originally they were quite small, probably 22 inches and 20 inches maybe for a pair. They always come in a pair. They were played by all kinds of people, I suppose, as they were sort of folk instruments. And then, of course, they got bigger and then they were mounted onto a horseback because they formed part of a military band. Then they were taken from the horse to the orchestra. I mean, people like Bach, Rameau, and all these very tremendous, great Purcell, these Baroque composers. And then they developed as instruments, got bigger, and adding maybe another drum. So you had not just two, but three, and then maybe another one. And so a set of four is standard. But there are times when one has to play, even more than that. And they're much bigger, they're mechanically tuned. It's a journey. The drums have been on a huge journey, but no less, or no more than brass instruments, wind instruments, and even string instruments. They've all instruments have changed.
So can I just ask, when you reflect on your career so far, you spent much of those years freelancing. How has that changed since you started from the academy to where we are now? And what have those changes been, good and bad?
You know as well as I do all the differences now that since I left the academy. Gosh, I mean, when I left, am I allowed to say when that was, Paul?
Of course you can, yes.
Yeah, well, I left in 1976. So I did I studied at the academy between 1973 to 1976 with a very fine man called James Blades. He was very entrepreneurial. He was probably Mr. Entrepreneurial percussionist in those days, and he was responsible for guiding Benjamin Britten in all his operas and his chamber works. All those wonderful timpani parts were devised with Benjamin Britten and Jimmy Blades together. So I had the benefit of this wonderful chap and the benefit of his tremendous experience. But anyway, when it came for me to leave in 1976, there I was out in the wide world. Or I should say, Paul, there we were out in the wide world, and there was just a lot of work in those days.
Yeah.
The orchestras were extremely busy. They were trying to. Most orchestras were actually almost having to split because they were so much work that they couldn't do all the work that they had. So there was always a demand for extra players. There were more orchestras, but they all worked and they all provided employment. So
Yeah.
my diary from day one was just like, I used to have a filofax. Do you know what a filofax is? Like a, well, it's a diary with pages that you can pull out and you can. It's like a little mobile. It was a little mobile office, so you could fill in all your engagements. Anyway, my filofax, as I'm sure yours uh, was Paul, was always pretty full. I had a VW van and one of the ones with a round front. I had a set of Ludwig timpani, and I used those Ludwig timpani and I drove them up and down the country and abroad and had a wonderful time freelancing.
Now you're a conductor, so was there a moment when you woke up in the morning and thought, I want to be a conductor, or did it kind of evolve?
It evolved, but certainly I mean certainly what conducting I do is stuff I do it because I really want to do it. And putting together interesting programs, and I love, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I mean, I am, I make no bones about it. That isn't to say that I'm not interested in modern music, because I am, and I also really like pop music, and I played in pop bands quite successfully. I've done a lot in my life. People ask you who your favorite composer is. You get asked this question, and I always say, well, that's an impossible question to answer because there are
Yeah.
so many. Over the years, you made. I mean, on one stage, I might have thought that I might have loved Bach, I might have loved Mahler, I might have loved, and I do love, and I mean love that music, love it. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting listening to them all one after the other singing a different song. I mean,
Yeah.
singing the same song, but with different singers and different interpretations, and they all do it differently. And you can tell they're all affected by the magic of this composer and what he was able to put on a piece of paper. It still amazes me, and I still sometimes, not sometimes, often go and quietly listen to it. One of my favorite songs.
Can we talk about your father, Gerard?
Yeah,
Because Gerard Hoffnung was an artist, musician, cartoonist, humorist, and incredibly famous for his witty and humorous cartoons, particularly on musical themes.
I think they were just a very welcome in that sort of post-war period. In the 1950s, because he died. He was very young when he died. He was only 34 when he died in
Mm.
1959. So he was working. I mean, he did most of the well-known work in the last, I should imagine, in the last 5 years of his life. He had a gift, obviously, and it was encouraged by his mother encouraged it, and he went on to do these cartoons. And then, but he was also fascinated by music, and his mother was a very musical woman, and she used to play the piano a lot. And I know she'd take him to the opera, which sounds a bit odd of taking a very small boy to the opera, but he obviously enjoyed it. And he used to come home and draw pictures from the opera. But there was always something slightly odd about them. He was a man who always saw the funny side of things. He was able to actually put that into his work.
What advice would you give to young people now about going into the music profession, or who might be aspiring to build a sustainable freelance career?
So I would say do your background work. Find yourself a good music teacher. Believe in your music teacher, because make sure you study with somebody who you have a huge amount of respect for and who you think will be able to teach you what you need to know. And there are lots of different ways of learning, and there are lots of ways of being taught. Work out what you think you need to be able to do, and make sure you can do it. And if you're not sure, ask your teacher or ask an advisor. If you really want to do it, you will do it. You will do it. Focus. Um, Again, listen to what other people are doing. Listen, go to concerts, listen to 18 recordings of Mahler 9, and compare them. Listen to the sound. Be curious. Be curious about music.
Wow, that's great advice, Ben. All it remains for me to say is thank you, Ben Hoffnung, for joining us on Harmony Hall of Friends. It's going to be a really fascinating podcast, I think.
Well, Paul, thank you very much. Um, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a pleasure catching up. I mean, I tell you, Paul, as I say, I haven't seen Paul for 5 years or more. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and I wish you the very best of luck in whatever you decide to do. Go for it.